Here's an idea to get you thinking. Why does it sometimes seem that before we experience the heights of life, we first have to face the depths of loss? Why would God allow us to endure seasons where everything is stripped away? Relationships, opportunities, even our sense of security. Is it punishment? Is it failure? Or could it be something greater? Something deeper than we can comprehend at the moment? God is not random. Everything He does carries a purpose. When we find ourselves in situations where it feels like the ground beneath us has been pulled away, it's not because He has abandoned us, it's because He is preparing us. Loss is not the end. It is often the beginning of transformation. Think about this. You don't pour new wine into old wineskins, because the new will break the old. So what does God do? He removes the old. He dismantles everything that cannot carry the weight of the new blessing He is preparing to release in your life. The process feels painful because we often hold tightly to what we know, even if it's less than what we deserve. God knows the strength of a structure is not seen in times of ease, but in moments of pressure. And so He allows us to walk through seasons of trial, not to destroy us, but to shape us. You may lose relationships, but God is teaching you who should and should not walk with you in the next chapter. You may lose opportunities, but God is redirecting you to something greater than you could have imagined. What seems like subtraction is often divine multiplication in disguise. Have you ever noticed that the seed does not grow until it is buried? The act of planting looks like the end of the seed, but in reality, it is the beginning of something greater. The seed loses its outer shell, and through that loss, it becomes what it was created to be. God sometimes allows you to lose everything because He is planting you for a season of growth. It's easy to trust God when things are going well, but the real question is, can you trust Him when you can't see the outcome? Can you hold on when the process doesn't make sense? Because here's the truth. God's greatest promotions often come after His deepest preparations. The loss is not the end. It's the setup. So, as you walk through seasons where it feels like everything is slipping away, understand this. You are not being buried. You are being planted. You are not losing. You are being refined. And when the time is right, the same God who allowed the stripping will also bring the lifting. But He will only lift what is ready to stand. Your greatest moments often come after your greatest challenges. What God is preparing for you will require you to let go of what is behind you. The question is, will you trust Him enough to let it go? Will you trust Him enough to endure the loss, knowing that He is about to rewrite your story? Hold on, because when God lifts you, nothing and no one can bring you down. Imagine for a moment, you've worked tirelessly, poured your heart and soul into something that meant everything to you. You've invested your time, your resources, your energy, and your hope. You built relationships, secured opportunities, and took risks. Then, without warning, everything starts to crumble. The relationships you once thought were unbreakable begin to fade. Opportunities that once seemed endless start slipping away. The things you once leaned on for support, the very things you thought were secure, seem to vanish overnight. It's in moments like this that we begin to ask, why God? Why do you allow everything to be taken away? Why does it seem like the harder I try, the further I fall? We question the process. We question the plan. And sometimes, if we're honest, we question God Himself. The weight of loss becomes so heavy, and we begin to wonder if we'll ever see the light at the end of the tunnel. But could it be that in that very loss, in the stripping away of everything we hold dear, God is preparing us for something greater? Could it be that He is setting the stage for a transformation we cannot yet fathom? In our world, we are conditioned to hold tightly to what we have. We are told that success means accumulating, holding on, and never letting go. But God's economy doesn't work like the world's economy. Sometimes the key to stepping into the next level of your life is not about adding, but about losing. God doesn't work in increments. He works in seasons of radical change. And in those seasons, He often calls us to lose everything so that He can give us something more, something that will last. When everything is taken from you, it's easy to believe that God has forgotten you, that you've been abandoned in your hour of need. But could it be that in that very moment, God is performing an act of mercy? When we are holding on too tightly to what we think we need, we are unable to receive the better things He wants to give us. Just like a child who is reluctant to let go of an old, worn-out toy, we cling to what is familiar, even though it's broken, because we don't yet understand what's waiting for us in the next season. Consider this. What if God is waiting for us to empty our hands? What if He is waiting for us to release the old so that we can receive the new? But there's a catch. If we don't trust Him enough to let go, we risk missing out on what He has prepared. This is where the process becomes excruciating. The pain of loss is not only emotional but often physical. It feels as if the foundation beneath us is being ripped away. Every part of us screams to hold on, to fight, to do anything we can to stop the inevitable. But the truth is, God's timing is perfect. The loss is not the end, it's the beginning of a new season. A season where He can fill us with what He knows we need, not just what we think we want. But here's the catch. This doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen when we demand it. It happens when we trust in the process, when we lean into the discomfort and confusion, knowing that God is orchestrating something far beyond our understanding. The question isn't whether or not the pain is real. The question is, will we endure it long enough to see what God has in store on the other side? Will we trust Him enough to let go, even when it feels like we are losing everything? And yet, it's in the midst of this struggle, when everything seems lost, that the seeds of our future are being planted. The loss you experience today is not just a loss, it's a burial. God is allowing you to be buried because He knows what's inside you. You are not just a person going through hard times. You are a seed. A seed that has the potential to grow and bear fruit. But in order for that to happen, the outer shell must first be broken. The protective layers must be removed so that the true essence of who you are can emerge. At this point, you might be wondering, when will it end? When will I see the breakthrough? When will I see the new opportunity, the restored relationships, the blessing that I'm hoping for? But the answer doesn't come with a timeline. It comes with a promise. And that promise is that the seed, though it may seem like it's buried in the dark and cold earth, is destined to rise again. The true work of God often happens in the hidden places, in the quiet moments where no one else can see the transformation taking place. You may not feel it, but in the quiet of your soul, in the dark of your circumstances, God is working beneath the surface. What's happening now is the beginning of something new, something bigger, something better, something that could never have come to pass unless you were willing to let go of what you had before. But don't be fooled. The lifting doesn't come easily. The seed doesn't grow just because it's buried. It grows because it has the right conditions. And those conditions require the breaking of the outer shell, the giving up of old things, the letting go of old comforts. That is the only way sometimes to succeed. There is no other way. You must sacrifice and sacramental. You must say, give it all. That is the only way. So as you stand on the precipice of your own season of loss, ask yourself, will you let God break you? Will you allow Him to strip away everything that's holding you back from becoming who you were truly meant to be? Because when the seed breaks, something extraordinary is coming. You just have to be willing to endure the process long enough to witness it. There are moments in life when everything seems to be moving forward. The doors are opening, the opportunities are abundant, and the blessings appear to be flowing in your direction. You feel as if you're finally in the right place at the right time. But then, without warning, the unexpected happens. Those doors close. Opportunities that once seemed certain begin to fade into the distance. The blessings you once believed were yours slip through your fingers as if they were never meant for you. It's in these moments, when all seems lost, that the true test of your faith begins. God allows these times of loss not because He is punishing us, but because He is redirecting us. It's easy to assume that loss is a sign of defeat, that is the end of the road. But the truth is that loss is often God's way of guiding us towards something better, something greater than we ever imagined. It may not make sense in the moment. It may feel as if everything you've worked for, everything you've prayed for, is being taken away. But what if this moment of loss is actually a moment of divine redirection? When everything starts to slip away, we are faced with a choice. Do we hold on to what's fading, or do we trust that God has a better plan for us? One that requires us to move forward even when it feels like we're losing everything. It's in these moments when we feel the weight of uncertainty bearing down on us that the question of trust becomes crucial. Do we trust that God knows what He is doing, even when we can't see the bigger picture? Do we trust that He is preparing a new path for us, even though the old one is slipping out of our grasp? In those moments of loss, it's easy to become consumed with fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the future, fear that we'll never get back to where we once were. But here's the thing. God is not in the business of taking away without a purpose. He is not a God who plays tricks or delights in our pain. He is a God who loves us so deeply that He is willing to allow us to experience discomfort, to push us beyond our limits, to take away the things that may have been holding us back, so that He can prepare us for something greater. The real challenge comes when we are asked to let go of what is familiar. When the familiar comforts of life are stripped away, we are forced to confront the unknown. And this is where true faith is tested. Can we trust God when we can't see what's ahead? Can we trust Him when everything we thought we knew is suddenly uncertain? Think about it. When you've been walking in one direction for so long, it's difficult to suddenly change course. You've invested so much into your current situation, into the people around you, into the plans you've made, into the dreams you've pursued. And yet when God allows that path to close, it feels like you've been thrown off course. But could it be that the closed door isn't a sign that you failed? It's a sign that God is opening a better door for you. Could it be that the detour you're experiencing is actually the very path that will lead you to the life you were meant to live? God's redirection is often subtle, hidden beneath layers of discomfort, confusion, and loss. We may not understand it in the moment, but it's in these times of uncertainty that we are given the opportunity to grow the most. We are forced to reevaluate our priorities, our values, and our understanding of what truly matters. In losing what we thought we needed, we begin to realize that what God has in store for us is far greater than what we had imagined. But here's the thing, the process of redirection is never easy. It's not meant to be a smooth journey. It's meant to challenge you, to stretch you, to refine you, and it often requires us to let go of something we thought we couldn't live without. Whether it's a job, a relationship, an opportunity, or even a sense of security, God sometimes allows us to lose things that we've held dear. Not because He wants to hurt us, but because He wants to prepare us for what's next. In these moments, when everything seems to be slipping through your fingers, you may feel like you're losing ground. It's easy to become disoriented, to feel as if you're drifting in an ocean of uncertainty. But the reality is that this time of loss is a process of recalibration. God is not abandoning you. He is preparing you. He is adjusting your course, aligning you with a new purpose, a higher calling. But here's the catch. It's not enough to simply lose. It's not enough to go through the motions of pain and confusion. The real question is, how will you respond? Will you fight against the redirection? Will you hold on to what's fading, or will you trust God enough to move forward even when it feels like you're walking into the unknown? In these moments of loss and redirection, you are being refined. You are being transformed. God is removing the things that can no longer carry you into the future He has planned for you. The pain you feel is not wasted. It's part of the process. The discomfort, the uncertainty, the moments of doubt, they are the tools that God uses to shape you, to prepare you for the next season of your life. And so, as you stand in the midst of your own redirection, don't resist the process. Don't fight against the changes that are unfolding. Trust that even in the moments when it feels like everything is slipping away, God is preparing you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. The sense of uncertainty that washes over you when everything starts to slip away is unlike anything else. It's as if the ground beneath your feet suddenly turns to quicksand, and with every attempt to regain your footing, you sink deeper. The relationships that once gave you strength begin to fade. The opportunities you were counting on begin to evaporate. And the vision you had for your life seems to blur into a haze. You begin to wonder, why did I do wrong? Why is everything falling apart? But in that very moment, the question may not be, why is this happening? But what is God trying to show me? For when everything fades, when the things you thought were stable start slipping through your fingers, God's hand is often at work in ways you cannot yet understand. It's not always easy to see it at first. You may think that you've reached the end of your road, that you've done all you can, and it's just not enough. You may feel as though you're being abandoned in your time of need, left alone to fend for yourself. But the truth is, God is never far from you, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. He is not indifferent to your pain, but instead, He is using this moment to recalibrate your path. This loss is not the end. It is simply the space in which He is preparing something greater. Here's the challenge. When you find yourself in the midst of loss, the temptation to panic is overwhelming. It's hard to see beyond the immediate pain, the immediate emptiness. All you can focus on is the fact that what was once certain is now uncertain. But when you stop to look beyond the pain, you begin to realize something profound. In God's economy, loss is not an end, it's a transition. Consider the moment when a plant sheds its leaves in the fall. It may seem like a loss, like something is being taken away, but in reality, that plant is preparing for the next season of growth. The leaves may fall, but the roots are being strengthened. The soil is being enriched. The plant is being readied for something greater that will come with the arrival of spring. But in that process, there's a pause, a moment of stillness, where it seems as if nothing is happening. It's in this moment of pause, in the space where nothing seems to be going right, that God is doing His deepest work. What if your loss is a divine pause? What if God is using this time to strengthen your roots, to deepen your understanding, to prepare you for a new season of growth? It's in these moments of quiet uncertainty that the soil of your heart is being tilled, making way for the new things that will spring forth in due time. But here's the catch. This process isn't instant. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And in that time, you are called to trust. But the real test comes when we're asked to surrender, to let go of what we thought was ours, to let go of what we thought we needed. And that is when the tension rises. Because it's not easy to let go of what you've held dear. The desire to hold on to what's familiar, even if it's no longer serving you, is powerful. It's a natural human instinct to cling to what you know, to what feels safe. But here's the paradox. In order to receive what God has for you next, you must be willing to release what you have now. This is where the suspense heightens. The moment of release feels like a moment of sheer vulnerability. You're stepping into the unknown without a clear path ahead, without any guarantees. The temptation to turn back, to reach for what you lost, becomes almost overwhelming. But what if, in that moment of uncertainty, God is asking you to trust Him more than you ever have before? It is easy to trust God when everything is going well. when the path is clear and the blessings are abundant. But trust, true trust, is forged in the fires of uncertainty. When you have nothing left to rely on but Him, that's when your faith is tested, refined, and strengthened. This is the moment when God is not just calling you to release what you have, but to release your need for control. And so you're faced with a choice. Do you hold on to what's slipping away, or do you let go and trust that the God who allowed the loss is also the God who will guide you through the uncertainty and into something greater? But there's more at play here than just a simple act of letting go. When you release what's fading, you are making space. Space for something new, space for something new, something better, something more aligned with your true purpose. It's like cleaning out a closet. You have to remove what's cluttering the space before you can make room for what truly belongs there. It is in this moment of release that the real mystery begins. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what lies ahead. The future is as uncertain as the night sky, and you are walking through it, trusting that God is leading you, even when you can't see the way. Every step you take feels like a leap of faith, a decision to trust, even when the path is unclear. And yet, as you walk forward, something begins to shift. The weight of uncertainty starts to feel lighter. The fear of loss begins to give way to a quiet confidence. Not because you know what's ahead, but because you know the one who holds your future in His hands. You realize that in letting go, you've made room for something far greater than what you could have held on to. And though you may not see it yet, God is preparing you for a season of unexpected blessings. A season that could not have come without the loss, without the letting go. But the story doesn't end here. The journey continues. And you will soon find that the God who led you through the loss is the same God who will lead you into the next chapter of your life. What will that next chapter hold? What blessings await you on the other side of the surrender? Only time will tell. But for now, all you need to do is trust and keep walking forward. There are moments in life when everything seems to be falling apart, when the weight of the world presses down on you and every step you take feels heavier than the last. It's during these times when you feel lost, when you feel empty, that God may be doing something profound in your life. But here's the challenge. You might not see it yet. The pain of loss, the confusion of unanswered prayers, and the silence that follows seem to drown out any hope of clarity. In these moments, the question isn't just, why is this happening? But what is God doing beneath the surface? When everything seems to be falling apart, it's easy to focus solely on what's being taken from you. We begin to fixate on the things slipping through our fingers, the opportunities we've lost, the relationships that have ended, the dreams that are now shattered. We look at the rubble of our lives and feel the sting of every loss, every disappointment. But what if that very rubble is the foundation of something new? What if in the moments of your deepest loss, God is preparing you for something greater, something that would not be possible if you weren't willing to endure this process? You see, God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't allow hardship without a purpose. The moments that feel like the darkest seasons of your life are often the ones that will lead to your greatest breakthroughs. But the journey through those seasons isn't easy. It's often filled with confusion, fear, and uncertainty. And that's when the tension begins. The more we lose, the more we question. How much more can I take? How much longer do I have to endure this? But this is where God begins to work in the unseen, in ways that we cannot comprehend in the moment. He begins to strip away the layers of our lives, the things we have built up around ourselves for comfort and security. These things may have been useful at one time, but they cannot carry us into the next season. And so, God allows them to fade, to be removed, so that we can make room for what He truly has in store. Now, it doesn't feel like this is happening in the moment. In fact, it feels like the opposite. You might feel as though you're being abandoned, that all of your hard work, your sacrifices, your prayers have been for nothing. The silence is deafening. But could it be that this silence is not abandonment, but preparation? Could it be that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating a plan so much bigger than what you can see, that if He revealed it all at once, it would overwhelm you? It's in these moments of silence, when everything seems still, that the deepest transformation is taking place. God is preparing you, refining you, aligning your heart with His will. It may feel like nothing is happening, but in reality, everything is happening. God is doing a work within you that cannot be rushed. The seeds of your future are being planted in the soil of your pain. The process is slow, sometimes agonizing, but every moment is leading you closer to the future He has prepared for you. But here's the catch. This preparation comes with a cost. It requires you to endure the discomfort of change, the unease of letting go, and the uncertainty of walking into the unknown. It's easy to trust God when things are going well, when the road ahead is clear. But real faith is tested in the moment when everything around you is in chaos. The question isn't whether God will provide, it's whether you will trust Him enough to keep walking, even when you can't see the outcome. The stripping away of what is familiar, the loss of what you thought you needed, is not meant to destroy you. It's meant to prepare you for what's next. But that doesn't mean it won't feel like destruction in the moment. The pain of loss can be overwhelming. The fear of the unknown can paralyze you. But remember, what feels like loss is often the soil where new growth will emerge. The very things you are losing may be the things holding you back from stepping into the future that God has already prepared for you. It's in these moments, when everything feels like it's falling apart, that God is doing a deep work in your heart. He's not just removing the external things from your life. He's purging the internal things that are keeping you from walking in His full purpose for you. The doubts, the fears, the false beliefs about who you are, and the limitations you've placed on yourself. All of these are being dealt with, refined, and reshaped. The silence, the emptiness, is actually a gift. It is the space where God can do His deepest work. But the question is, can you trust Him in that space? As you walk through this process, there will be moments when the uncertainty becomes overwhelming. You may find yourself questioning everything you once believed about your future. The path ahead seems obscured by fog, and every step you take feels like a leap of faith. But it is in those moments when the path seems invisible that God is most present. He is guiding you through the darkness, leading you even when you can't see where you're going. But that's the nature of true faith, believing that He is with you, even when you cannot see the way ahead. And yet, even in the darkness, you will begin to see the faintest light, the smallest glimmer of hope. It won't be immediate, and it won't be obvious. But as you continue to walk forward, trusting Him every step of the way, you will begin to see the faint outline of the future He's preparing for you. What once seemed like loss will reveal itself as part of the greater plan, a plan that was always in motion, even when you couldn't see it. But the real question isn't just whether God is working behind the scenes, it's whether you will allow Him to work in you, to refine you, and to prepare you for what's ahead. Because the future God has for you is far greater than you could ever imagine. But in order to step into it, you must be willing to trust Him in the unseen, to believe that the work He's doing in you now will eventually lead to the fulfillment of His promise. And though the process may feel like it's tearing you apart, it's actually making space for the new things He is about to bring into your life. It is often in the moments of deepest despair and loss that the true nature of our faith is revealed. We have all heard the phrase, when one door closes, another opens. But how often do we truly believe it? How many times do we question what's behind that closed door, or whether it was even meant for us in the first place? When God allows us to experience loss, it can feel like the end of a journey. a detour that we didn't sign up for. It's in those very moments of loss, however, that we are unknowingly being prepared for something greater, something we couldn't have possibly imagined at the time. Let's see what this means. You see, loss is not always a sign of failure, though it may appear that way. It is instead a sign of transition. It's easy to believe that the moment we experience loss, something is wrong, that we have made a mistake or failed in some way. But the reality is, loss often serves as a clearing, an opening for God to do something new in our lives. When everything that we have known begins to fall apart, when the familiar pieces of our world begin to crumble, we are forced to look up, to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about ourselves and our circumstances. It is in this moment that the decision is made, not about what we've lost, but about whether or not we believe that something better is waiting for us. It's a test of trust, a test of whether we believe that what is ahead is better than what we've left behind. The loss we experience forces us to grapple with the most difficult questions about faith. Do we truly believe that God has a plan for us, even when it feels as though everything is falling apart? Can we trust that what we are losing is nothing in comparison to what God is preparing for us? When we are forced to let go of what was once comfortable, familiar, or even essential, the pressure becomes unbearable. The struggle to maintain control over our lives intensifies. And yet, it is only in letting go, in surrendering, that we begin to make room for what God has in store for us. God doesn't take things from us to punish us or to leave us empty. He removes things so that we can be filled with something far greater than what we were holding on to. The discomfort we feel in losing what we thought we needed is part of the refining process. It is through the discomfort that God reshapes us, realigning our hearts and minds to receive His will. But here's the problem. Letting go is not easy. It's hard to release something you thought was meant for you. It's hard to trust that something better is on the other side of the pain, especially when the path ahead looks uncertain. And so, the tension builds. We are caught between holding on to what we know and stepping into the unknown. It's in this tension that the true work of transformation begins. When we are willing to trust that God is leading us, even when we cannot see where we're going, we open ourselves up to a future that will unfold in ways we never could have imagined. And so the question arises, how much are you willing to trust God in the midst of your loss? Are you willing to walk away from what you thought was yours, to let go of what you thought you needed in order to embrace what God has in store for you? This is where faith is tested. Not when things are going well, not when everything is clear, but when everything you've worked for, everything you've built, seems to be slipping through your fingers. That's when God's plan begins to unfold quietly behind the scenes. You may not see it yet, but what you are letting go of is simply the old version of yourself. The version that was comfortable in the past, but can no longer move forward into the future. But the struggle to let go doesn't end there. Once we have made the decision to trust, we still have to endure the wait. The waiting period between the moment of loss and the realization of God's plan is often the hardest part. It feels as though nothing is happening, as though we are stuck in a perpetual state of limbo. The silence is deafening. The future is unclear. And yet, it is in this silence that God is working. It is in this waiting that He is preparing us for something greater. The waiting is not passive. It is not idle. God is shaping our hearts, fortifying our spirits, and strengthening our faith. Oh God. But during this time of waiting, doubt often creeps in. The uncertainty of the future, the unanswered prayers, and the unfulfilled promises can cause us to question whether God is truly with us. We may even begin to wonder if we've missed the signs, if we've made the wrong choices, if God has forgotten us altogether. The tension between trusting God and doubting His promises becomes unbearable, and we are left with one question. Will we hold fast to our faith, or will we give in to the fear that is slowly consuming us? But it is in this tension that the miracle happens. The waiting period is not just about the future. It is about our transformation in the present. God is not just preparing something for us. He is preparing us for something. The losses we experience are not just external. They are internal as well. They challenge our beliefs, our expectations, and our relationship with God. Every day we endure the waiting, the uncertainty, the discomfort. We are being shaped and refined in ways that we cannot yet see. As we wait, we must learn to trust not just in the outcome, but in the process. We must learn to believe that God is doing something in us, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Every day we endure is a day closer to the fulfillment of His promise. But the journey isn't about the destination. It's about what God is doing in us along the way. It's about the lessons we learn, the character we build, and the faith we develop as we walk through the unknown, holding on to His promises, even when everything around us seems to be falling apart. As we walk through life, we often find ourselves holding on tightly to the things that have defined our identity, our careers, relationships, financial stability, and even our own accomplishments. These things give us a sense of control, a sense of purpose, and a sense of security. But what happens when those things are suddenly taken away? When the things you thought were the foundation of your life crumble beneath you, leaving you standing on shaky ground. It's in these moments that you may feel as though you are losing everything. And yet, it may be in this very moment that God is doing something deeper, something more profound than you can understand. When God allows you to lose everything, it's not because He wants to see you suffer. He doesn't allow loss for the sake of loss. No. In His divine wisdom, He is using that loss to strip away the things that you have relied on more than Him. Sometimes we get so comfortable in what we have, in the life we've built for ourselves, that we forget to rely on the one who gave it all to us in the first place. And so God allows us to lose these things, not as a punishment, but as a way to refocus our hearts and minds on what truly matters, on Him. But here's where the tension begins to build. You may not realize this in the moment. In fact, when everything begins to fall apart, your first instinct is likely to ask, why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? The pain of loss can cloud your vision, and it becomes almost impossible to see beyond the circumstances in front of you. But it's in those very moments of uncertainty that God's work is often most powerful. It's when we are stripped of everything we thought we knew that we begin to see clearly what truly matters. This is amazing because it challenges all of us to recognize the preeminent role we play in shaping it. Think about a tree in the winter. When the weather turns cold and the tree sheds its leaves, it can appear lifeless, barren, and empty. But the tree isn't dead. It is simply resting, awaiting a time of new growth. Beneath the surface, the roots are being strengthened. The branches are being prepared for new life. And so it is with us. When we lose what we thought was essential to our survival, when we feel like we're stripped of everything that once defined us, we are actually being prepared for something greater. The loss is not the end of the story. It is simply the beginning of a new chapter. But this process isn't immediate, and it certainly isn't easy. In fact, the pain of loss often feels overwhelming. The fear of what comes next can paralyze you, and the uncertainty of the future can leave you feeling completely adrift. Yet, in the midst of this storm, God is moving. He is working in ways you cannot see. The loss is not the end. It's the process that leads to something deeper, something more enduring than what you once had. Here's the challenge. When you lose everything, there's a moment where you are faced with a choice. Will you turn to God, trusting that He has a purpose in your pain? Or will you allow your pain to consume you, to drive you into despair, into a place where you believe that nothing will ever be the same? The decision you make in this moment is critical. It will determine whether or not you will emerge from this loss stronger, wiser, and more aligned with God's will for your life. The beauty of the process is that as God strips away the old, He is making room for the new. He is opening doors you never imagined, guiding you to opportunities you never considered. But here's where the suspense lies. You don't know what that future will look like yet. You don't know how or when it will come to pass. And that is where the tension remains. The waiting, the uncertainty, the fear. All of these emotions swirl around you, making it hard to hold on to the faith that everything is working together for your good. And yet, even in the midst of this uncertainty, there is a quiet confidence that begins to rise. A knowing that though you may not understand it now, God is working behind the scenes. Even when everything seems chaotic and out of control, He is orchestrating every detail of your life, aligning you with the very purpose for which you were created. You may not see the whole picture yet, but as you trust Him, step by step, you begin to realize that He is with you in the process, guiding you every step of the way. But even as you begin to trust, there's a constant battle taking place within. The temptation to go back to what was familiar, to cling to the comfort of the old life, is powerful. It's tempting to think that what you lost was what you needed all along, that perhaps the pain you're experiencing wasn't worth the sacrifice. The tension between holding on to the past and stepping into the unknown can feel unbearable at times. The uncertainty is overwhelming, and the waiting can feel like an eternity. But God doesn't operate on our timeline. He is not bound by the limitations we place on our understanding of time and circumstances. While we may feel like we've reached the end, like we've lost everything, He is simply setting the stage for something far greater. He is not only restoring what was lost, He is preparing you for a life that is beyond your wildest dreams. But to get there, you must trust the process. You must trust Him when you cannot see the outcome. You must believe that the losses you've experienced are not the end of your story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. One that will unfold in ways you cannot yet imagine.